is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Hello and welcome into another edition of Three Ma. I am John Kurtz, joined by Derek Young from K-State Online, Cole Manbeck, former beat writer for the Manhattan Mercury. Look, I'm not going to beat around the bush, man. Last night was a night for the 360 vodka. It was a night for the Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon, and lots of it. I was sitting next to someone who was slamming some, I don't know if it was specifically that, but it should have been, slamming some drinks the entire night, and I was very jealous that he was and I was not, because my God. But Holiday Distillery, great people. They've got the 360 vodka. They've got the Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon. They are K-Staters, so go out and support them. They support our pod and our great people. K-State clobbered at home by Oklahoma, 73-53. I don't know that I've ever seen a team not score through the first two media timeouts, but I have now. I witnessed that as K-State did not score a single point before the under 12 media timeout. Finally got a free throw from David Gasson to make it 8-1, but that was really how most of the night would go. It was pretty reminiscent of the Nebraska game offensively for the Wildcats, and it was a game that they were a slight favorite in Vegas, and one that you felt like they really needed coming off of a two-game losing streak and getting clobbered at Houston on Saturday. So I don't know. Where do we start with this in your eyes, DY? Like, we've seen this team have putrid offensive performances before. We know that they're pretty limited offensively, but it usually doesn't look that bad. It's only the second time this year it has looked that bad.
Yeah, the problem is that it's not an outlier, right? This has happened before. They actually scored more points in the first half against Oklahoma than they did in the second half against Nebraska. I know that's probably pretty stunning to consider, but they only scored 12 points in the second half against Nebraska. So again, this is not an outlier. There's a few other halves that are pretty much in the same boat as well. And to do it after two straight losses, to do it in your own building, and to do it in a game that matters so much for you in terms of your NCAA tournament resume and where you're positioned in the Big 12 is a bit deflating to consider, to be quite honest. I'm not saying they came out flat, because I don't think they came out flat, but to come out that struggling that much and looking that less prepared than the opponent was a little bit alarming, I think. The coaching, Jerome Tang said in his press conference, I think Dream Dowling tweeted it, said this loss is on us. And it's hard to disagree, because I thought one team looked a lot more prepared than the other. Jerome Tang just talked about, again, missing shots not going in, but felt like they were good looks. Like, I think I would agree with that for the most part in the second half. I thought they got good looks in the second half because they finally adjusted or figured out what was happening, and they got good looks. And then at that point, they weren't just going in. But the first half, you'd have to really, really convince me to think that a lot of those were good looks, because I don't think many of them were at all.
I didn't think they ran good offense in the first half. I mean, the ball stuck. The ball didn't move. Oklahoma kept hedging the high ball screen and doubling, and K-State didn't move the ball quickly enough out of that and dribbled into traps. And, yeah, I mean, I didn't think it was good offense in the first half. I think I could probably count on one hand in the first 8 to 9 minutes of the game the number of good shots that K-State took. I mean, there were a couple of open looks, but it was David Gasson from three, right? And I know David hit a couple of threes against Oklahoma State, but that's probably not your ideal scenario where he's the one taking the threes. I think Day-Day Ames had an open three, but again, Day-Day, and look, he can make it, but he's around 25% on the season from beyond the arc this year. I just didn't think they were able to get into an offensive set into their half-court offense. Oklahoma had a game plan. Porter Moser had a game plan to attack this K-State offense, and the Wildcats didn't have an answer for most of the first half, and they just dug themselves too big of a hole. And I remember, I think they'd cut it to 12 with about a minute before half, and I turned to Brody, and I'm like, if they can just get it to 10 or under at half, feel pretty good with the way they played. And then Oklahoma goes down and back-to-back baskets and goes up 16 into half. And I know K-State dug their way out and got it to 51-44, and they had the crowd into the game as they headed into the under 8 media timeout. And you thought, well, maybe Maybe they can pull this thing off. They're in the double bonus attack, and then they just had an absolutely brutal stretch, a 12-1 run. Then Oklahoma put the game on there.
That was the roughest stretch of basketball in a meaningful moment that I can remember, at least under Jerome Tang, because it's 51-44, and you said it. The crowd is into it. The momentum is on your side. You just closed a considerable gap. At that point, I'll be honest, I thought Kansas State was going to win the game at that point. I really did. And then they're down 7. They forced 2 missed threes on contested shots. Great defense. Can't get a rebound. I think you go down and Tyler Perry dribbles it out of bounds. Yeah. They come down and I think you give them another second chance.
Yeah.
I think you missed layup and it was just a tip in. And you go down there and you turn it over again, I believe. And then they come back down and I think it was a 3-point play on a foul.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was 3 offensive. Yeah.
It was the inbounds pass. They just
inbounds pass.
Over through the inbounds pass to nobody.
Yeah, Arthur Kaluma just threw the inbounds pass to nobody in the middle of the floor. That was, I turned to my buddy Steve at the time after that. I was like, that's the worst stretch of basketball they've played all season. And it came at the moment when they had to, because the shots aren't falling, like they put so much effort over the course of the first 11 minutes of the half to get to that point where they're even within shouting distance. And they just threw it away in the span of about, not even game time, like a minute and a half real time, just completely threw it away and then it was gone. That was it. That was your fleeting chance at it. I wouldn't have said that at the time that I thought they were going to win the game, but at that time I thought, okay, we're going to have a close game down the stretch. Like they're going to be in this down the stretch. And it was, I've got it pulled up here. You've got, missed 3, offensive rebound, missed 3, offensive rebound, OU scores. Tyler Perry turnover. OU missed layup, offensive rebound, score. Kaluma throws the inbounds pass away. OU misses a shot, gets an offensive rebound, and scores. And then Arthur Kaluma turns it over again. And then there was a foul on Arthur Kaluma. That was the stretch. So
yeah, it's to use a phrase that people use in those moments when you feel like you're right there and you have a chance. It really felt like they literally peed down their leg, like in that moment. And that was, crushing to watch. And I guess I didn't expect that to ever have some of those types of feelings for a team coached by Jerome Tang. And it just has me a little stuck in what to feel about this team right now. And it's a soul searching moment. Maybe they can pull out of it. We'll see. It doesn't feel good right now. And I'm at a loss for words about the way that they performed in that game. They've lost by about 20 points at home twice this season.
And I was going to say, and this is, the point I shout out to Fan made this point. It wasn't Houston or Kansas at home that they lost those games to by 20. It was Nebraska and Oklahoma. Now, if this were 1973 and we were talking about the game being played at KSU Stadium in football, that's fine. This is basketball in the year of our Lord 2023. It's not good to be losing by 20 to Nebraska and Oklahoma. That's probably not really fair. Oklahoma's at least a decent team, and Nebraska's, they're fine. They've got.
Nebraska. Yeah, Nebraska beat Purdue. I think Nebraska's a fringe NCAA tournament team. Oklahoma will probably make the NCAA tournament. I don't think there's, unless they melt. But you still, to your point, this is a program under Jerome Tang heading into this year that lost 1 game at home last year, and it was a 3-point loss to a top 10 Texas team that was in the Elite Eight, where they blew a big lead, and then they've been good at home for the most part this year, except then you got the Nebraska game and you got this game against Oklahoma. You can't be losing games to those teams by 15 plus and not really feeling competitive for much of the game. That was disheartening. There just weren't a lot of answers for it. And look, I could find, if I wanted to look for optimism, I could look to last year and I know it's a completely different team. I could say in late January to mid-February last year, they lost 4 or 5 games, and there was a stretch they lost at Texas Tech and at Oklahoma on the road, including a 14-point loss at OU that they were getting blown out at one point in the second half to 2 teams that didn't even play in the postseason. So there was a stretch last year similar to this timeline of when this occurred, but you had Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson, and there's not the star power to pull you out of that. They won 4 in a row after that stretch. So like I could say like go to Stillwater, win the game, flush this one, and then you got KU on Monday, and do you just pull everything together and have one heck of a night? Well, then you forget about this game against Oklahoma. But right now it's hard to see in the immediate.
Yeah, I was going to say the difference is being those games were on the road. Even if they would have lost to Oklahoma on the road by this much, I don't think I would bat an eye too much. And like you said, some of that star power, I think you had a little bit more trust in that particular group to turn it around. And I'm not there with this one, to be quite honest. And part of it too, and I realized maybe they felt the game was already away from them, but the moment that it felt like the players on the floor conceded, not Jerome Tang, but the moment that the players on the floor conceded seemed a little too early for my liking of where their headspace is at as well. Because I really felt, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, but I really felt like the body language and the spirit took a gigantic shift with even just 5 minutes left in the game. And that was also troubling for me to watch.
Well, it was really after that 12-1 run that we just talked about. I mean, that was around the 6-minute mark in the game. And like I said, I think a lot of that has to be you're expending so much effort to get back into it, and then it just poof is gone. And I think that had to be pretty disheartening. And to the point about overall, yeah, I mean, Cole, the thing is why this hurts. And I think saying, hey, it's at home and not on the road definitely makes a difference. But it's also because you don't have the star power. And because of that, we just haven't seen like the super high highs this year. You know, it feels like they had been just barely getting by, kind of like hanging on to like a tournament worthy resume by finding a way to pull that Baylor game out of the fire, which is a hell of an accomplishment. And I'm not trying to run that down, but we already felt like they were really overachieving in a lot of ways with the start that they had, better than the sum of their parts. And like looking at the roster, like, I don't know how they're doing this. Like this roster doesn't seem like it's good enough to be winning 4 of the first 5 in Big 12 play. And now it's like, okay, they were just kind of barely skirting by. Now it feels like this is almost more of like a drop back to reality. I don't think they're this bad. Don't get me wrong. I don't think they're this bad at all. And I don't think they will continue to play this poorly. But we have not seen on the other end the really high highs, the performances like a Texas or a Baylor last year that really reinforced to you like, okay, no, this team could absolutely go win on any given night. You just don't have that confidence in where this roster is at right now. And look, a lot of it is, I mean, they've been through a lot of adversity, and we've talked about it a bunch. I know I don't want to keep hammering Naquan Tomlin and Quez Glover at this point in the season because it is what it is, but that is a part of it. They're very limited. But I guess I use that to set up the conversation about the offense, because I do want to talk more about the offense. But we'll do that after we tell you about our friends at Home Field Apparel. If you want 15% off your first order, make sure to use promo code 3MA23 at homefieldapparel.com. Of course, Home Field Apparel is your spot for the best K-State gear around. They've got 40-plus selections there. Lots of old-school logos. Great way to get your K-State threads at Bramlage Coliseum or wherever you're going to be rocking your Cats gear. They've also got 100-plus other teams if you would prefer to indulge in that way as well. It is sincerely one of the best places and most popular places right now to get your collegiate apparel at homefieldapparel.com. Promo code 3MA23 for 15% off, and we're back in just a moment.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com. KCSN.substack.com.
I think it was Chris on our Discord, and if you want to be a part of the Discord, it is patreon.com/3MA, by the way, $5 a month, and really cool community of folks that we have there, basically a big group chat on the Discord. And Chris, I know, mentioned like, hey, with the team as limited as they are offensively, maybe like 1 out of every 8 to 9 games, you're just going to get a game like this. That may be an inevitability of the roster. I do think there may be something to that. But overall with the offense, like, is there something that can be done? Clearly they were much better in the second half, and I got to give credit to Tyler Perry because he continued to fight his ass off and put up 23 points in the game. after he got really harassed in the first half. And I know he's a guy that's taken a lot of heat, so I do want to recognize what he did. He seemed to be trying to almost single-handedly will K-State back into that game in the second half. But they clearly have a lot of limitations. Like, Perry is trying his best at point guard, but it's a lot on his shoulders. I don't think it's really his natural skill set. He doesn't have great size, and he doesn't have great like explosiveness and maybe I shouldn't say athleticism, but explosiveness. He doesn't have the explosiveness to get around people and get by people, and he doesn't have the size, to be able to really function in a lot of ways there too. So it's tough on him, and it takes away from what he can do shooting the ball. And then you don't have really anybody, maybe Cam to an extent, but you don't have anybody that you can just kind of throw the ball to when the shot clock's winding down, things haven't gone well, and say like, hey, go make a play. And when you don't have those two things, I mean, it really forces you to be very reliant on ball movement and making sure that that's all working well and moving it around and getting guys open that way. And there are just times that it breaks down and it just seems like there are no answers anywhere. I mean, you can bring guys off the bench, and it just felt like last night there were no answers coming anywhere. So my question to you guys would be like, what options do you have coaching-wise in those scenarios? Because I know there's so much frustration with the offense, but is it just that this team has the limitations that they have, or is it you got to do something coaching-wise to draw up more sets, change the offense a little bit? I know Cole and I were talking a little bit the other day about when Brad Underwood magically went to the pinwheel offense in a Frank Martin season that kind of saved a season, pulled it out of the fire. Is there something else that you can do offensively from a coaching standpoint to try and make that better?
I don't know. I'm not like the basketball, I'll admittedly not like a basketball savant when it comes to a lot of these X's and O's, so I'm not going to pretend to dig into the weeds of that. What I will say is I realize that there's probably, some ounces of execution that are impacting this and not getting exactly what they want from their guys when they throw them on the floor at times. I get that. But it goes back to me hearing like, I thought they were good shots and not necessarily agreeing. Like, he could be right and I could be totally wrong. I'm talking about Coach Tate. He knows a lot more about basketball than I ever will, and he's a hell of a coach in about every single way. But for me, watching that first half and seeing just the few amount of good looks that they were able to create for any of their big three, it's not like you only have one guy. You got three, and I think Arthur Kaluma had one or two good looks. Heck, he airballed one, so that goes back to the execution part of it. But I don't remember a good look for Tyler Perry in the first half, and I don't remember a good look for Cam in the first half. I think he went to the basket a couple times where he maybe should have finished. I think he didn't get a call one time where he should have got a call. But just like really open looks from the outside for these three, I don't remember that many. I remember a couple for Kaluma, and he was totally off, so it didn't really matter. But I don't remember a ton for the other guys. And Cam was off too. I think he was, 1 of 12 from the three-point line, something like that. So I go back to it. Some of it is execution and missing shots. But some of it's not getting good looks. I mean, last year you had two guys. I know there was Desi too, but it just felt like the looks were still better then even. So I just struggle with the kind of shots that they are getting. Because if you said we got good shots and you're talking about threes for David Gasson, like Cole alluded to, then or Dede Ames, then I struggle with that. Because good shots for this offense is just a little bit of space for Arthur Kaluma, for Cam Carter, for Tyler Perry. And to go almost an entire half where you could probably count those on one hand just doesn't feel right to me. That's not enough. So I don't know where I stand on it. It could be a spacing issue. And if it's a spacing issue, should you not play two bigs as much? I think those are all things that have to be considered.
Yeah, I mean, look, Carter and Kaluma combined to go 3 of 20 from the floor, 0 of 10 from 3, score 9 points. So 2 of your big three do that. Tyler Perry had 23 points. He made 7 field goals. You made 16 field goals as a team. So the other 9 guys combined for 9 made field goal attempts in the game. That's not going to get it done. And, when I watch this offense, I feel like it's too much dribbling. The ball doesn't move enough. I watch other teams, the ball's moving a lot more. It's out in and out of the hands. Look, I'm not a basketball savant to where I'm going to be able to tell Jerome Tang or this staff anything that they don't already know. They're far wiser to me, like you, DY, than I think Jerome Tang and the staff, they're all great coaches. So I have a lot of trust in them. But, I do think back to John, I think it was before the game last night, actually, you called me on the drive to Manhattan that we were talking about when Frank Martin transitioned to the pinch post offense with Brad Underwood into the 2010-11 season. And I covered that team. I had to go back and just find the timeline of when that happened. And Frank Martin says, quote, "I didn't like the direction we were headed." And he talked about, about the time we played Colorado on January 12th, our offense had become bogged down and was a slightly different roster than we started the season with. We weren't as effective as we thought, and they made the transition. Well, it's not the same roster you thought you were going to start the year with, right? When they went to this 5-out offense, K-State's lost Wes Glover. They've lost Naquan Tomlin. That 2010-11 Frank Martin coach team lost, I believe, Wally Judge and Freddie Asprilla. And obviously Asprilla wasn't as good as they had thought, but, they adjusted. And so do they re-examine the 5-out with this roster and try to make an in-season adjustment? It's not easy to do, but at this point, it may be necessary. K-State's 158th now in the country in KenPom. Now, I went back because I was interested in how this stacked up to past years, like the Bruce Weber last couple of years, and it's still a decent amount better than those last couple of seasons under Bruce offensively. And that's not to drag Bruce Weber. I was just interested in the comparison. But they got to get better on the offensive end of the floor because it's putting so much pressure on their defense that they got to be perfect on that end of the floor to hang in games. And I know they pride themselves on being a great elite defensive team, but when the shots aren't falling, you're not running good offense, it becomes harder to play good defense, not only from a mental standpoint and all that, but teams, when you miss shots, teams can get out and run more. And it's harder to get into your half-court set defense. And so good offense can lead to good defense. And right now, K-State's not having a good time on the offensive end. It was the second worst efficiency performance of the year next to Nebraska on the offensive end of the floor. No surprise there.
Well, and, some of this may be when we talk about if there are going to be adjustments to the offense, whatever it is. I mean, these are lessons that Jerome Tang is learning as a head coach. He had a phenomenal first year. I think we all believe in him as an excellent coach. You can see all the attributes that make him just an outstanding coach with a really high ceiling. I mean, I think he's got an incredibly high ceiling as a coach. But we all may have, bought into like, hey, last year was so magical and amazing. Like there are never going to be real significant bumps in the road. And like, hey, this guy is a second-year head coach. Like there are lessons that you're going to have to learn that I think are inevitable. And, you may not be able to just skip some of those steps the way that we would like to, especially when there have been so many things outside of the control of this staff this year that have happened to hurt what it is that they have to work with. So I think there's some of that too, and I know we talked a little bit about this last time, but I do wonder if there has just also been too much going on outside of what's actually on the basketball court this year, and particularly obviously lately with everything that happened at Iowa State. The comments that Jerome Tang seemingly now has walked back a little bit about the officiating the other night at Houston in a game that was not very close there, and he gets a technical at the end. He had back-to-back games with a technical. Lots of focus on officiating, what's going on with Iowa State, and just like things that are, again, kind of outside of your control. I just wonder aloud if there is some frustration that has built that has put too much of the focus on some of that, as opposed to like, hey, we just got to be above this and win basketball games. Now, again, I'm not a coach. I have no idea what those specific lessons are, what they look like. But I can tell you, again, like patreon.com/Freema, like talking to Fran Fraschilla the other day, both on and off air. I think that was kind of the message that I got. Like he said on air, like, I think Jerome Tang's a phenomenal coach. He's going to have a lot of success. But there are some lessons that you have to learn as a head coach. And I feel like there's probably a lot of that going on right now. And I still wouldn't put it past him at all to come out on the other side and have a really hot finish to the season after figuring some things out this year, because I believe that much in his coaching ability. But I think we may just be seeing some of the growing pains of a guy who is still a relatively new head coach in the game of high level college basketball.
Yeah, a hot finish is not off the table, and until the tournament is certainly not off the table. And I trust in their coaching enough to think that this will get corrected to an extent to make those things a reality. But in the current moment, I do think this team is in great need of some composure, and hopefully we start to see a little bit more of that moving forward.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to watch how they bounce back from this really tough 3-game stretch. So there's going to be some adversity to deal with, and we'll learn a lot about this team in Stillwater on Saturday, and what is a very winnable game, a game that you have to have. If you don't win in Stillwater, the NCAA tournament becomes an incredibly difficult outlook to try to figure out a path to getting there. So
it becomes pretty bleak at that moment. You're going to be playing in a very dull atmosphere. From what I've been told, the way that it looks like in Stillwater right now is even dramatically worse than the last few years from an attendance perspective. So you're going to be playing in front of like next to nobody on Saturday, to be quite honest.
I was watching them play TCU DY last week, and they maybe had 3,000 people there.
Yeah, I mean, they've completely checked out under Mike Boynton, and understandably so. But there's some challenges that come with that when you're used to playing in front of raucous 10,000 crowd. So they'll have to make that adjustment as well. But you said it. This is a key moment for Kansas State, almost, because you now have already coughed up that one on the win at home. Sorry, you've kind of forced yourself into a little bit of a must-win thing with KU on Monday too. Just because you can't be giving away that many games on the road, and if you do get that one away, then what? You got to go undefeated at home the rest of the way, and the pressure gets ratcheted up even further. So by doing what you did against Oklahoma, you put a little bit more pressure on yourself for that KU game. Not that that's the way they look at it, but the way that we look at it from a attorney perspective. And I'll say this, and this isn't meant as a slight or a jab at anyone, but the way that game ended at Oklahoma, and it being the second time that it felt that way with Nebraska being the first, they're probably a little fortunate that now they have a winnable game on Saturday and that it is the KU game on Monday, because those types of feelings and performances sometimes just not only, I mean, I hate saying this, but some fans check out when that stuff happens, but you kind of avoid that because you have a very winnable game immediately afterwards, followed by a game that everyone's going to come to no matter what if you're 1-18, right? So you got that working for you. And if you do take care of business and were to somehow come out of that 2-0, then you don't really lose that support the way you probably could have after this Oklahoma game.
Look, I was in attendance at that KU game, John, when Nigel Johnson went off for 20 plus and beat KU, a top 10 team that year. That was completely unexpected out of nowhere, and this team's better than that, obviously. DY, were you on the beat by then? I don't think you were yet. No. So yeah, I'm not gonna,
So it was like 5 years before DY was here.
Yeah, I will say
it was like 15 or 16.
I guess it was 14, 15. That was the Marcus Foster lit with Randolph disaster, blow everything up year. That was that year. So I mean,
yeah. I will say
to that end, Cole, that team did have a decent amount of talent on it. It was just a complete shit show with everything that was happening behind the scenes. But yes,
I will say that they didn't finish it out, so none of this really matters. But it probably would have been a similar feeling to the one where one of Bruce's final years they almost beat KU at home when Nigel Pack had that explosive first half.
Yeah, I mean, look. You win at Oklahoma State, even if you lose to KU, and then I think you go to BYU that following Saturday. Look, that sounds brutal, but you lose to KU, to your point, DY, if you do win out at home after that, you're going to make the tournament, because that means quad one wins over BYU, Iowa State.
Yeah, but at this point, like some of those
TCU.
games, yes, but some of those teams are just as good as KU or better. To be honest.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying you would put an immense amount of pressure on yourself to probably have to win all those games.
And considering the crowd support that you're going to have for that game, considering what I think of the KU right now, and maybe they'll snap out of it too. Like, call me crazy, but like that game's just as winnable as maybe like Iowa State at home this year, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to argue with that right now because there's not the same mental edge that Kansas used to have coming into that building because you've beaten them enough times now. Tang beat them last year. So, yeah, I mean, I agree. I think you have to treat them more like your typical just run-of-the-mill upper echelon Big 12 team as opposed to putting them on a pedestal. So, yeah, I think all that's fair, and I think your point about the way the schedule breaks is another very good point, and especially if Bryce Thompson is going to be injured for Oklahoma State, which we were just learning about from our producer, Nick, as we hopped on here because none of us got a chance to see KU Oklahoma State last night. That'll help out too. And that, again, adds to the urgency of, like, this is a game that you do need to win. But, I mean, the tough part about it is, like, we think about this stretch being a 3-game losing skid, but which, by the way, pointed out by, I believe it was Parker in our Discord, that K-State has not led a basketball game in 120 minutes, which is obviously not great. And then even before that, Oklahoma State led for what felt like a vast majority of that game, certainly late first half into the second half, and you barely pulled it out of the fire in Manhattan. So it's been a stretch here of really not playing very good basketball for 2 weeks. And that was an Oklahoma State team that you don't feel like is very good. And that game was in Bramlage. And it really took, like, the crowd. You know, we talked about that after the game. It was the crowd. Once K-State finally was able to get in front, Oklahoma State kind of wilted under the pressure and the crowd got to them. And that was what helped turn the tide there. Well, you're not going to have that. Now, Oklahoma State may not have the advantage on the other side to be able to flip it there with 3,000 fans, but you're not going to have the boost that you got from the home crowd that, I mean, I think we could all agree if that game were in Stillwater and it played out virtually the same way, they may not win that the first time around. So that's the concern, I guess, point being going into this. You certainly can't take it for granted that they're going to roll in there and win the game.
John, let's go to Stillwater.
Bryce Thompson, did we mention him yet? The may not play?
Yeah. He's not going to play. So
that's significant. I excuse me. I obviously was at the Oklahoma State game last year where the Kansas State won. Pretty good win at the time. K-State had a lot of fans there.
That's why I said, John, let's go down to Stillwater. Just take it in.
It's actually, and to be honest, it's just because of the time of the game. I think it's at 1:00.
Yeah,
you don't even need a hotel. You can just drive there and back.
Yeah. Here's the update. Here's the update on Bryce Thompson. He obviously went down. Nick let us know this, so we looked into it. He hurt his right shoulder. X-rays were negative on fractures, but they're going to get him an MRI to see the exact severity of the damage. It was his right shoulder, so shooting. And Bill Self actually said after the game, quote, and I guess Bryce did dislocate his shoulder, and they had a hard time getting it back in place, but they did. So assuming that's the case, he was in a sling on the bench. It's hard to see him playing 3 days later. So
I'm not even criticizing Bill Self, but I laugh at that Bill Self gave like this such a injury report of the other team.
He gives the more descriptive report than anything Boynton was going to say.
And I'm sure he was concerned. I mean, Bryce Thompson started his career at Kansas and probably asked Boynton for an update and gave it away. So
that was just funny to me.
So and Bryce Thompson is nearly 12 points per game. He's their second leading scorer. He's their most experienced guard by far. Feels like he's been in the Big 12 forever at this point. You lose him, they have one guy that averages double figures, and that's Javon Small. So you have to win this game.
They only have one guy that'll be on the floor that's averaging double figures.
Yeah, they're already a young team. I mean,
I was saying, combine that with the way Kent State's going, this could be a first to 50.
Yeah, you have to win this game, especially without Bryce Thompson, presumably. So
great analysis, Cole. You have to win this game.
Yeah, well, and John, you asked earlier.
I said that about the Oklahoma game at home. I'll be honest.
Yeah, John,
that was a must-win to me.
John, you asked about never seeing the media timeout thing. 2 media timeouts without a field goal. So I went back and remember that Georgia game in 2014 or 15 in Bramlage,
the New Year's Eve.
Yeah, they had 12 points at halftime.
Okay, I remember being. I watched that game at from the Riverwalk in San Antonio because K-State was getting ready to play the Alamo Bowl.
Alamo Bowl. Yeah, that's right. They were down 20-12 at half. But they did not go the first 2 media timeouts without a field goal. They had, I think, like 4 at the under 12. But still.
And this one, if I I think I wrote it somewhere. I think last night, K-State at 3 at the under 8.
It sounds about right. I mean, they took 9.5 minutes to get a field goal. And even that was a tough, like David Gasson had to just kind of throw it up.
And the first point was a free throw.
Yeah. I mean, it just, I don't know. I thought Jarrell Colbert showed some more flashes again last night on the defense, especially.
But the that 51-44 stretch that we just hammered, the offensive rebounds were on him.
Well, one was, right? The other, Dorian Finister gave up an offensive rebound to his guy on a putback.
Yeah, but the two off the three-pointers.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, Will McNair got benched like 4 different times last night. Like he got yanked off the floor every time he got put in within 1 minute because he wasn't getting the defensive board or playing defense. So,
I mean, that was a tough thing. When we talk about like personnel limitations, I already outlined things in the backcourt, but then, too, like, they kept trying to go back to McNair, and it just was not a night where that was going to work. And DY, do you remember what Tang had a quote about it in the post game that was just like he wasn't locked in, he wasn't there.
He said he wasn't locked in. He wasn't there with us tonight, and then
that's what it was. There with us tonight,
yeah. He wasn't locked in. He wasn't there with us tonight, and then immediately after that, he said, "And that's on me. That's not on Will."
Well, and as a result of that, Oklahoma only played John Hugley, their larger big, who's not quite as mobile. They only played him 8 minutes, and he's their 5th leading scorer. So, they didn't have him on the floor as much. And look, if you would have told me that Hugley, Owe, and Uzan would combine for 6 points total on 2 of 17 shooting, I would have said K-State would have won that game handily. I mean, those are 3 of their top 5 scorers, and they combined for 6 points. But Jalen...
Then I tell you the shooting numbers from Cam and Kaluma, and you would probably have the opposite.
Yes, exactly. I would. And K-State goes 4 and 28 from 3, and it's disappointing because now you've got so many examples. Against Miami, they were 4 of 28 from 3. Against Nebraska, they were 4 of 30 from 3. USC 8 of 33. North Alabama 3 of 18 from 3. And now this team is 30.8% from beyond the arc on the season. 289th in the country in 3-point shooting. And as a KSU_fan pointed out to us, they're on pace for the 4th worst shooting performance from 3 in school history right now.
Yeah, here's the problem. I'm kind of going over this in my head a little bit. Tyler Perry basically has no chance, right, if Cam and Kaluma are going. And because if the defense doesn't have to worry about Cam Carter, Arthur Kaluma, and you can put 2 on the ball, like Tang said. Perry's just not one. He doesn't have the size to beat that. Probably not going to have the athleticism to beat that. There's not a whole lot he can do, and he still pulled stuff out of his butt last night. I'll be honest.
So I was going to say, like he still, I give him credit because that was exactly the situation he faced last night, and he fought his ass off to score still.
Yeah, because here's the thing: people said, "Well, then don't screen for him because then you're bringing that double to him." Okay, you put him alone. Most guys need a screen to get an open look. He's not going to be able to get too many open looks without a screen. So there's a dilemma there.
Cole, any thoughts on the work of Jeb Hartness, Marcus Pettigrew, and Brooks Wells last night? Your officiating crew.
They were, to be honest, considering what we have, and I'm sorry to butt in on Cole, I just want to kind of considering what we have seen in Kent State games like the last 3 or 4, I thought that group was fine.
Yes, I don't have any, I'm not saying I had like a huge issue with anything. K-State was not playing well enough for that to affect much of anything at all. I just feel like this should be like basically a staple, a show staple. We go to Cole for the ref report, and it was Jeb Hartness, Marcus Pettigrew, and Brooks Wells.
Somebody even came up with the name for it on our Discord, right? They called it like something with the whistle or something.
Yeah.
Oh, blow the whistle. Yeah, blow the whistle. Blow the whistle, named after the classic Too Short song. So yes, all right, Cole, blow the whistle. What's the report card on good old Jeb, Brooks, and Marcus? I was right next to him in the courtside seats, and I liked Marcus Pettigrew. That guy was cool. I liked him. See, positivity.
Look, officials have a hard job to do, so it's hard. out there.
You're saying Gary Maxwell's job is hard.
Look, I'm just here so I don't get fined. So, look, the Big 12 has come down on me since wishing an injury upon Gary Maxwell.
I was going to say, you really, for the first official blow the whistle segment, you're really putting
I'm being held more accountable than Gary Maxwell is by the Big 12 office. I've been reprimanded for wishing a pulled hamstring on Gary. So, no, I am not. But look, okay, here's the thing. Like, and this game was not decided at all by the officiating. What I was gonna say, like, one of the problems for K-State right now on the defensive end of the floor, I pulled up to Bart Torvik and was looking at their numbers, and their opponents in each of the last 3 games have a free throw rate of over 60 or higher. Well, going into this last 3-game stretch, the highest free throw rate a K-State opponent had this year was 47. Oklahoma had a free throw rate of 72.2 last night, which was the second highest mark of the entire season. Iowa State was a 76. So K-State had been really good at not putting teams on the foul line. In the last 3 games, Iowa State shot 39, Houston shot 34, and then Oklahoma shot 39 last night. So K-State's putting teams on the foul line far too much. Now, they're fortunate that Oklahoma shot it so poorly from the free throw line, or it could have been much worse. But, you know, they got to stop putting guys on the foul line so much. And, you know, there's definitely been some missed calls there. But again, officials, they have a hard job to do. I think Jeb Hartness sucks. But I thought Marcus Pettigrew was pretty good. Brooks Wells, you know, is Brooks Wells. So he officiated the game in 2021 against Kansas in Manhattan when K-State jumped out by 18 to 20 point lead. Nigel Pack couldn't miss, and Bill Self went to good old Brooksy, and you know there were a lot of ticky-tack calls after that. But the officials obviously didn't cost K-State the game.
No, what I will say is one of my actual problems though was, and maybe it was rightfully so, just there were so many fouls called, and I mean 64 free throws in the game.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's so many fouls called, but then you got a football game against Houston on Saturday and down there. Like there's just no consistency game to game on how it's going to be called. Like you go into each game and you have no idea how these guys are going to call the game because it's just being enforced inconsistently by each varying crew. So yeah, look, I don't want to become the guy that just always bitches about officiating, to be honest. So I'm going to take a step back.
You don't want to become that guy?
I don't want to be that guy anymore.
Okay. Okay.
I think there's a few things that we should probably mention, or at least tie a bow on before finishing up. I don't think that you've mentioned it, Kurtz. I know you've mentioned it to us before the show more than once. Kansas State hasn't led for 120 minutes, right?
I did mention it. It got worked in there. Okay. Yeah.
120 straight minutes without a lead.
But thanks for re-emphasizing it, DY. It's good to hear.
I mean, I think it's kind of important.
I know.
Kansas State did not shoot well, obviously. Oklahoma did not either, technically. Now, from the field, not too bad. They were 43%. Oklahoma was 3 of 14 for the three-point line. Kansas State made more threes than Oklahoma. So that's kind of a stunner. I will say Kansas State was very consistent. They were 2 of 14 from the three-point line in both halves.
I think part of the problem, DY, is K-State made more threes, but they attempted twice as many. I mean, you shot 28 to their 14. They were getting the ball inside.
No, I know.
I know. I'm just saying, like, that illustrates part of the problem right there. I mean, K-State is 30.8% from 3 on the year, but they shot 28 threes. That's too many threes for a team that can't shoot it very well from 3.
Well, yes. So, but that just means you have to get to the rim more, and they're not the most conducive to getting to the rim at all times. So you got to do one or the other. I mean, do you want Tyler Perry shooting a 3, or do you want Tyler Perry going to the rim?
Yeah.
I mean, take your poison. Another thing, and this has kind of been a trend, I think, for the last 2 or 3 weeks, which kind of goes to show you, I mean, Jerome Tang is insistent upon this, so I'm confident that he's telling it like it is, that this team is a much better shooting team in practice, and for some reason, just not translating to the game. But their free throw percentages have been just worsening as well. I mean, even Tyler Perry missed 2 more last night.
That was surprising. Yeah, I mean, look, none of the trends seem very good right now. Are we tired of Porter Moser? Curious for a Cole opinion on
Well, I'm not
Porter
a fan.
Moser.
Porter Moser sucks.
I'm not a fan of it. Now, I think he's a good coach. I just don't like him.
I can't stand watching that guy, man. He paces up and down at 100 miles per hour. He's
Yeah, dude, you watch that guy in game coaching, it'll stress you out. Just because of how stressed he looks.
yeah. Honestly,
I was right across the way from him. I watched him the entire game, and I even Cole. I went to go to the restroom in the 2 single stall bathrooms that exist in all of the lower level of Bramlage Coliseum, and I got caught like right as I walked, literally right next to Porter Moser into the tunnel, and then they turned the corner. The media room and the bathrooms are right there. And I got the entire Oklahoma celebration. Like the second Porter Moser turned, it was like this, everybody was going totally nuts and yelling and screaming. And so I got to hear like the entire Oklahoma celebration, which actually like was fine. It was nothing that I'm not about to say here. It's like, but like, no, it was pretty standard fare. But I'm just saying I got to hear Porter Moser screaming like a little girl there when he turned the corner with everybody. So,
and my last final note of this show is stop giving John Kurtz courtside seats.
Oh yeah, that is over.
Because he got courtside seats for Nebraska and Oklahoma. Like, do not do it again.
I told him when it was 6-0 last night, I got bad vibes, and I said, "You get up and get to your regular seats."
The
right
worst
now.
offensive performances under Jerome Tang have come when John Kurtz sits courtside.
I have to
put him in the nosebleed section.
I have to say, like, honestly, like, I found myself genuinely blaming John last night. Like, I kept seeing him on TV, and I kept getting angrier as he just kept sitting there, and I was like, that shot didn't go in because John Kurtz is sitting right there. I was getting so mad.
He did take accountability at halftime. John came up to me and said, "This one's on me,"
and he could have still left. He could have moved.
I could have went back to his original seat.
Look, I don't want to like put it all on John, but I mean, really, like at this point, we've got too large of a sample size. 46 and 51. 2 worst offensive efficiencies.
And 2 of the worst halves. 19 in the first, 12 in the second.
Well, spin zone here, Cole. You could have been with me courtside. The seats were essentially offered to both of us. So if you could have found a babysitter, then you could have been there too and totally changed the vibes of everything because you sat there for the Baylor game. So I would actually throw some of this back on you. For
guilt trip. Yeah. Guilt trip the single father this week with 3 kids. Or all alone, trying to take care of my family.
It also sounds like he's blaming the mother of your child for not being at home.
Well, I didn't do that. Cole did that on the phone when I talked to him. But that was...
I don't think Vanessa will watch this edition of 3 Mom. Actually, watch. This will be the one time she tunes in. So she'll tune in on her flight home from Chicago today. Yeah. So
definitely nobody tweet Vanessa Manbeck.
Yeah. Yeah, don't let her know. So I did not make it last night, unfortunately. That's actually the first Big 12 game I missed in the Jerome Tang era. So Big 12 home game.
I just want to say that I tried to do my part, okay? Because I did get eventually the officials' names all down because I didn't recognize any of them. After a while, I was like, okay, I think I've seen Brooks Wells and Pettigrew. I don't think I've ever seen that Jeb dude who was the worst of the 3 for sure. But dude, the beginning of the second half when K-State was great, Oklahoma was already in the bonus by the first media timeout, and Marcus, it was the cool one. He was standing over by us, and I relentlessly during that media timeout let him know that Oklahoma was in the bonus by the first media timeout, which seems ridiculous. And then immediately, bang, bang, K-State got 2 calls from Marcus Pettigrew right as the action started. So I did my part, all right? I tried. I also got Jeb to glare at me because I was making fun of his name a little bit. So I feel like I did some pretty good work there. I tried to give my best effort. And Jerome Tang on postgame said he apologizes to the fans because the fans were excellent, and I'd have to think that a part of that was my effort included in that. So I think even Jerome Tang praised my efforts afterwards.
Well, every time I saw you on TV, I saw your head down, or I saw your head.
There were
doing that.
Cole, I got to be honest, there were a lot of these. There were a lot.
I think I did that a few times too. What I will say is Jerome Tang did applaud the fans. I'll applaud the fans for as brutal of a watch as that certainly was, especially in the first half. That was a very engaged crowd until the breaking point, 51-44 to get a 12-1 run. That was a good crowd, and it didn't have a lot of reason to be a good crowd, but for some reason it was up until when Oklahoma finally created the last bit of separation.
You guys have been at my house. I was watching the game in the basement. The girls and the kids' bedrooms is up on the second level, so it's 2 floors apart. And at one point in the first half, my twin girls both came down to the basement. I already put them to bed, and they both came down and they started crying and said, "Daddy, why are you yelling so loud?" And I was like, "All right."
You really don't want Vanessa to watch this shit.
Yeah. So I had to take him back up to bed. I was like, next media timeout, going back to bed, right? Everything's fine in the Manbeck household. Everyone's composed. Everything's fine. We'll move on. We'll go to Stillwater, beat Oklahoma State, be 5-4 in the league, and play KU. Or K-State will hit a buzzer beater that'll get waved off, and everybody will feel down in the dumps. And then on Big Monday,
and then Dorian Finister drops 38 right on Kansas on Monday.
It would seem more likely. It would probably seem more likely to put the 38 with Cam or Kaluma, or because it was Jacob Poland that scored the 38. But you're going with the wild card, I see. So,
who would it be? Who would be the most likely to pop for 38?
Cam.
I almost feel like, but Tyler can get so hot from 3. I almost feel like it would be like Tyler Perry just hits like 10 threes.
You saying Nigel Pack 2021 performance coming in is burying 3 after 3?
Let's actually finish the game. No.
Okay. Had to go negative town, DY.
We lost that game, so.
Oh man, what banter these last 15 minutes? I don't even know how we like.
Needed some of that, man. I mean, the first half of the show, the first 30 minutes of the show was all, it's not super fun to talk about. We needed a little release.
Cool. We got to throw it away, just like football. Yeah.
I thought I was going to get out of this show without anybody mentioning where I sat and the correlation there, but I almost did. If it wasn't for you meddling kids. Thanks to our friends at Home Field Apparel. Thanks to our friends at Holiday Distillery. We appreciate Nick Springer doing his work behind the scenes. For Derek Young and Cole Manbeck, I'm John Kurtz. Thanks for listening. Take care, and we'll talk to you on the next edition of 3 Ball.